Hello and welcome to Crime Beat Most Wanted. I'm Tracy Tong. Tonight, police are on the hunt for a gun runner who was convicted of trafficking illegal firearms. Guns that police say were intended for a dangerous street gang. Detectives listen in to coded conversation and uncover one of the biggest shipments of illegal guns is about to cross the border. They identify and take down a trafficker at the heart of an international smuggling ring. Kamar Cunningham was convicted of his crimes. He skipped his sentencing hearing, and police have not seen him for years. They need your help in bringing him to justice. Here is Caryn Lieberman with the hunt for Canada's most wanted, Kamar Cunningham.
Weston Road and Lawrence Avenue in Toronto's West End is home to a large park with baseball diamonds, tennis and basketball courts, a pool and a splash pad for children to play. But the neighborhood along the east bank of the Humber River is also home to a dangerous street gang.
The 5-point generals, or the 5PG, is composed of people who were born and raised in that area and have now taken up crime as a way to make a living. They were involved with several crimes, including homicides, shootings, firearm trafficking, drug trafficking. In a crime group like this, there are people who have specific roles, from the people who deal to the street-level dealers, to the people who bring the drugs into the community, to the people who are responsible for getting firearms to arm the gang members to defend themselves from rival gangs.
Those turf wars ravage communities and kill innocents. Like a shooting on Boxing Day in 2005 that left 15-year-old Jane Kriba dead.
Kriba was hit by a hail of bullets, what appears now to have been a gang gunfight.
She was out shopping with her mother and sister. And a suspected gang shootout in 2007 that led to the death of 11-year-old Ephraim Brown at his cousin's 18th birthday party.
Typical with gangs, they want to control that area. They want to be the only ones in there who are supplying drugs to the people in the area. So they live in the community, but they also prey on the community. The 5-point generals are viewed as one of the biggest threats in the GTA at that time.
In September 2017, Toronto police set out to dismantle the 5-point generals.
I'm confident that Project Patton will result in the incarceration of numerous violent gang members and that it has a direct and positive impact on community safety.
Project Patton becomes one of the biggest investigations, netting one of the largest seizures of illegal firearms in Toronto police history. But it begins by seeking consent from a judge to listen in.
A Part 6 investigation is kind of what we view as the peak of investigations. Part 6 is a section of the criminal code that dictates how and what circumstances we, the police, are able to intercept members of the public. With the 5-point generals, we could see that their criminality had risen, and once intelligence started looking into them, identifying associates, identifying people at the core of the group, then you start looking at those people specifically.
In a covert location, Detective Travis Clark listens in.
I was one of the lead investigators in the wire room. Our job in the wire room was to direct surveillance, listen to intercepts as they come in.
Yo, yeah.
We started intercepting communications of certain individuals. One of them was Bill Allison. Bill Allison was an affiliate of many of these five-point generals.
So what time are you? No, am I?
He's speaking to a male in Florida that he was referring to as Biggs.
One Japanese on right now.
This group spoke patois.
Something completely different. Understand?
It was a very hard patois, very difficult to even understand.
Pick up the Irish mash there.
There was coded language used. There's different terms for guns, for drugs, for money.
They listen to a call from a car. A meeting is going down between Allison and an unknown male.
Yo, sir. Come, make a right, Paul Lawrence, and meet me at the shoppers. All right, cool.
So I contacted Detective Steinwell, said, we need to see this meet. We need to identify who Mr. Allison is meeting with, and advised them that we believe this transaction is going to be down at the shops at Don Mills.
So our surveillance team sets up in that area, and we're waiting for somebody, and we're not sure who it is. So we race to this area, and we actually find them in the parking lot. They acknowledge each other, and then they follow each other in tandem through the lights and down the Donway, and both vehicles then turn down this driveway.
Next to these high-rise condos.
Next to these high-rise condos, and one vehicle in front of the other. Both get out, have brief conversation, and the male goes to the trunk of his minivan and takes out a package. He gives it to Bill Allison, he puts it in his vehicle, and I observe all of that.
Detectives follow a man not known to them before.
He pulls into his driveway, and from his truck he pulls out several boxes of mangoes and puts them in his garage.
At that point is how we identified Harris Poyser in this criminal organization.
They later hear what was in that package.
The one them give you, him have way prettiest than that man. And come one there. Okay, all right.
What we believe and know now is that there was a firearm transaction in between the shops at Don Mills.
As the investigation into this group gathers steam, we realize that these firearms are coming from the United States. They're going to come through the Cornwall border, and they're going to go directly to the streets of Toronto into the hands of criminals.
There's been an uptick in violence in Toronto's West End, and police are zeroing in on the activities of a violent street gang they believe is responsible.
Hello? Yeah.
As they use wiretaps and surveillance to track the main players, they learn of a big shipment coming. Could be drugs, but they're almost certain it's firearms.
When we first identified Harris Poyser, he wasn't our typical gun trafficker. He was an older man. He had a family, he had a normal job. I recall it was importing fruit from Jamaica.
It's what he was doing outside business hours that concerned police.
So we went to a Superior Court Justice and provided the information and the evidence we had in relation to Harris Poyser. A judge agreed, and once we started listening to Harris Poyser, it opened up the big picture.
Good morning, sir. Pleasant good morning, sir. How you doing? I'm good. So we have about 30 depending where right now.
And at that point then, it was almost like a floodgate of calls.
A surveillance team follows Harris Poyser.
So in May of 2018, information was given to us from the wire room that Harris Poyser was meeting two of his associates in this parking lot. And they met roughly in this area here. Harris Poyser parked his vehicle in this spot, and that's the first time we laid eyes on Kamar Cunningham and his associate Caryn Lieberman.
We didn't see a whole lot in Kamar Cunningham other than he was involved in this network with Poyser.
That day, later, Harris Poyser went on his way, and Kamar Cunningham and Caryn Lieberman drove to Cornwall.
A border town in eastern Ontario, around 100 kilometers from the capital, Ottawa.
They went to a house on 515 Oliver Lane in Cornwall. And not much on the lines about any pickups, any guns, any drugs coming back, or was it money going to the person at Cornwall?
They pulled on a street where we couldn't get any observations, and then they drove back directly on the highway.
What we didn't realize at that time, there was an exchange of guns that was coming back.
The very next day, Kamar Cunningham met Harris Poyser again in this lot, went closer towards this World's Gym. And although information was coming from the wire room that there was possibly a firearm transaction, we were unable to see anything change hands. Kamar Cunningham was then followed back to Mississauga, where he was seen carrying a bag from his vehicle and meeting people in and around his condo.
Pick up the Irish mash there.
A call tells them what they missed.
They discussed how the guns weren't good guns.
Which one do I load? The old one, you want one rusty one, come on, brother.
Some of them were rusted, some were broken.
Everybody load, brother. No, man, one old rusty one, man. The old what? You know, that was a mistake, one, but it can load.
It wasn't until later that intercepts told us that 30 firearms exchanged hands that day.
Steve Watts is the superintendent of organized crime enforcement for Toronto Police.
Firearms are purchased legally in the U.S. and then they're obviously transported illegally and across the border as illicit firearms onto Canadian soil and specifically into the GTA. With Mr. Cunningham or any other individual, it'd be through their criminal contacts, through their street gang contacts. There are certain people that are moving weapons and firearms.
How big of a problem is this?
The public is aware of the firearm violence across Canada. It's a significant issue, and it comes down to the access and the usage. Wherever your border point, crossing point, whether it be Detroit or Cornwall, as easy as you can drive into a location, into a safe house or into a location, those guns are being moved. Obviously for a fee, for a price, but they're being moved very quickly.
The 30 guns were no exception, but a lack of certainty during surveillance meant the team was faced with a choice, and the wrong one could have blown the entire operation.
See, at that point, we can take them down, get those 30 guns. We weren't in that position. It is like a chess game. If we take that shot and arrest them at that moment and there's no guns there, what are we left with?
We were frustrated, we were a bit upset, but it wasn't long after that we started to receive information that there would be a larger load coming in from Cornwall.
Wait a minute. Well, stop. How much did we get? 60, right?
On May 23rd, there was calls coming that there was something coming across the border, that Biggs had set it up down there.
I don't know. Yeah, I think, yeah. I think I 60, yeah.
And they talked 60 and 100, you're still thinking kilos of coke. So on that date, was it the guns coming across or was it drugs coming across?
I assemble our surveillance team and we follow Harris Poyser to Cornwall. We set up observations there and we're waiting. We're waiting to see what Travis is hearing in the wire room.
Trust me. We're supposed to done already, because they're pretty. Yeah, everyone.
And at one point, Harris Poyser says very quickly at the end of the conversation, he says to Biggs, how are they wrapped? Are they wrapped nicely?
You put them in a plastic bag each? No, man, they must catch up them wrap the right way. Them wrap Very good.
His response to that was, no, they're all packaged very softly so they don't scratch. At that point, I realized it was guns and not drugs. No one cares about scratching kilos of cocaine. I've never heard that term. But scratching new guns, that devalue them. So at that point, I was confident there was 60 guns. Harris Poyser was observed to go to 515 Oliver Lane,
where he backs into a driveway but doesn't get out of the car.
I receive information from another officer that he observes two very large bags going into the trunk of Harris Poyser's car. I relay that information to Travis Clark and he corroborates the information that he's receiving on the wiretap.
He said there were very heavy bags, just two of them, that went into Mr. Poyser's vehicle.
And from there, Travis Clark is confident enough to tell us to stop the vehicle, arrest Poyser for possession of firearm, and seize what is in the trunk.
He had a full grasp of the moment, as well as I did, in the chance we're about to take.
It's the riskiest part of the operation, and it's not lost on Detective Clark.
And when I say that word takedown, I'm putting one of my best friends, Andrew Steinwall, in a precarious position, but I'm asking him to do his job. They have to take this individual in custody. They have a natural fight or flight mentality, like most humans do. And most of them are armed. It's a very dangerous situation to be in. Then I hung up the phone and I sat and waited. And at that point, it was just quiet. It was quiet.
Adrenaline is pumping at this time. We're hoping that, we are right. We're hoping that what we are seeing are firearms in there, and we're hoping that the information that Travis Clark received was accurate. We do a high-risk vehicle stop of a vehicle. Harris Poyser is taken out without any incident, and I go directly to the trunk. I open the trunk, and there's 2 large duvet packages, and inside each duvet is 30 semi-automatic handguns, all different colors, all different sizes, and 30 in each bag.
Kind of the coup de grace for Detective Steinwall and I in our 24 years to make, at the time, was the biggest firearm seizure in the history of the Toronto Police.
Welcome back to Crime Beat Most Wanted. Police are on the lookout for Kamar Cunningham, who they say has been evading arrest for years. He was convicted for his involvement in an organization that trafficked guns, but has not served his sentence because he can't be found. They want you to be on the lookout and to call in tips that will help bring him in. Here's more on the hunt for Kamar Cunningham.
It was the single largest seizure of guns in Toronto police history.
I can advise that 60 of the handguns that you see before you today were obtained in a single seizure from an individual who was intending on delivering them to high-ranking individuals within the 5-point general's hierarchy. The guns were destined to become crime guns in Toronto and the GTA.
They described them in the intercepts as pretty little things. They were pink camouflage. They were small. They had extended magazines that could hold, illegally hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition in that gun. So when you get them all laid out with the colors, colors of the rainbow, they were pretty little guns.
That could cause a whole heck of a lot of damage.
A lot of damage. And every one of them was meant for a criminal's hands.
Police arrest one of the men who they say allegedly put guns into hands, Kamar Cunningham. They also arrest 75 others for more than 1,000 combined offenses.
Mr. Cunningham played a significant role, a primary role on the Canadian side for this. He was responsible for the 60 brought in at Cornwall. Also, there was an additional 30 that had come in prior.
It's estimated that these 60 guns would generate profits of around $200,000.
In partnership with the ATF, investigators track back exactly where and when they were bought from a gun show in Orlando, Florida.
And so there's something called a time to crime, that when that gun is illegally purchased for the purpose of trafficking it and putting it into the hands of a criminal who's going to use that gun. I believe it was 4 days. So they had to purchase those guns down in Florida, have a driver lined up, get them to the border, have someone take that chance going across the border, get it into the hands of Poyser. And Poyser brings it back and distributes to Kamar Cunningham and another individual who distribute these guns into the hands of criminals.
We are the largest undefended border, right? We know that. And that comes with huge advantages, comes with huge privilege, and it also comes with a downside. There are certain states in the United States that are prevalent with the issue of straw purchasers and export. And for Eastern Canada, it's primarily what they call the Iron Pipeline. It is I-75. So if you look at the states that I-75 goes through, Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, down into Florida,
They discover there were 40 more guns on the way.
There was 40 that were held back because the American suppliers obviously understood that there was an issue and that their contacts had been arrested. They would have found that out very quickly.
60-year-old fruit salesman Harris Poyser pled guilty to firearms importation and trafficking. He was sentenced to 15 years behind bars. Bill Allison was convicted of firearms trafficking and sentenced to 6 years. Kamar Cunningham was convicted of firearms trafficking, but he was not there to hear that verdict.
We arrested him, I believe it was June 21st, as he returned to Canada from Jamaica. He was given an ankle monitor bracelet. I believe he cut that bracelet off and went missing again. He was in breach of his conditions, I believe, a second time, released a second time. He was put before the courts again and released a third time. And that third time, he was convicted in absentia of participating in active as a criminal organization of firearms trafficking and sentenced to 9 years. And he hasn't been seen since that last court appearance.
They're hoping that making him one of Canada's most wanted will lead to his capture.
Kamar Cunningham may or may not be pulling the trigger, but he is definitely putting the firearms into hands of people who would pull the trigger. How important is apprehending Kamar Cunningham? Extremely important for the safety of the citizens of Toronto.
Here is one last look at Kamar Cunningham. He was last seen in Toronto, but he could be on the move. Police are asking you to call Crime Stoppers with tips, no matter how small they are. And remember, it's anonymous. I'm Tracy Tong. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat Most Wanted. See you next time.
For more from Crime Beat, there are over 80 episodes of the Crime Beat podcast available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.